Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this month's edition of Sow the Land Hemp Farming, presented by Minorities for Medical Marijuana. My name is Stanley Atkins II, and I am the National Director of Hemp Farming and Technology for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. For those who this may be your first time attending, what is Sow the Land? Well, Sow the Land is one of the programs offered by us here at Minorities for Medical Marijuana. The Sow the Land program includes everything from business resources to our Farmers Network, which is a free resource for current and future hemp farmers who are cultivating domestically and in U.S. territories. Today's event, we're going to be discussing the cultivation of hemp and the state of Florida. Because as many of us know, just because something grows very well in one region or one district doesn't necessarily mean that that translates to the rest of the country. We have a few housekeeping rules today. If you are watching, please feel free to share today's episode. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe to Minorities for Medical Marijuana. This event today is being broadcast live via Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. For more updates in the future, be sure to click the like button, follow, and subscribe to Minorities for Medical Marijuana. And don't forget to turn your notifications on. Today, we're going to be getting into this conversation. It's going to be very interesting. So, if you've been following us each month, we've had a different guest with a different topic that represented a different variation of the industry. Well, today, we're taking it back to the dirt. We've all heard the term from seed to sale. Well, today, we're going from seed to table because we're going to talk about how do you take it from a seed to a product that could potentially go on your table, your medicine cabinet, or in stores. Today's guest is going to be none other than Mr. Randy Rembert from Rembert Family Farms, located right in North Central Florida. If you go ahead and bring up Mr. Rembert. Good afternoon, Mr. Rembert. I'm going to go ahead and read some of your bio for our guests and our attendees to give them a little bit of background and feedback about who is Mr. Randy Rembert and how did Rembert Family Farms come about. Randy Rembert was born and raised in Gainesville, Florida. He attended Bucholz High School in Gainesville, where he was captain of the track team and co-captain of the football team. He attended Edwards College in Jacksonville, Florida, a historically black college. He also majored in business at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida, where he also became a published author. Mr. Rembert is a fourth generation black farmer. He is also the manager and founder of Rembert Family Farms, LLC. Rembert Family Farms was the first black-owned hemp farm in Florida to plant and harvest since the recent legalization through the 2018 Farm Bill. Rembert Family Farms has harvested three compliant hemp crops, all viable by the DPI, all within the last 3 years. As a manager of Rembert Family Farms, Mr. Rembert oversees 5 acres currently in Hawthorne, Florida. Mr. Rembert has over 20 years of Florida agriculture experience and nearly 3 years experience in growing cannabis hemp in the state of Florida. Lastly, Mr. Rembert is an organic farmer, and this allows for sustainability without using harsh chemicals that cause runoff that leads to such things as red tide and other discrepancies in crops. One thing about Mr. Rembert that he wanted us to know is he does what it takes to make cannabis grows successful in Florida. Mr. Rembert, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you and I have been talking. It is such a pleasure to have you on today. How are things down there in Florida?
It's nice and warm over here, but I definitely can't complain at all.
Well, I know they don't call it the Sunshine State for no reason. You guys get a
That's true.
lot of sunshine, but sometimes it seems like Florida gets just as much rain as it does sunshine, even if that rain is quick. Sometimes I lived in Florida for a while. You get to have those quick little flash showers.
Flat showers and then tons and tons of humidity. So besides the sun and the heat, the main thing that we have that's so different from everywhere else is the humidity.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you could speak up just a little bit so we could make sure attendees can hear you
No
clearly.
problem.
And for anyone watching live, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, but also don't forget to comment. If you have questions, we may be able to answer them today live on the show. Well, Randy, you heard they heard my intro of you. What could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did this come about with, Rembert Family Farm? So tell us a little bit about yourself and the current work that you're doing.
All right. So currently we're researching different strands in the state of Florida to see what exactly is going to work out here. I started hemp because I was trying something different to do. I had a moving company at the time, and I felt like I was getting up on age. So I decided that it would be best if I went out and did something a little bit different. So I went back to my roots, which is farming. Around that time, one of my loved ones got sick. She had a tumor in her jaw, and I started to research the benefits of how cannabis could not only help tumors but help cancer in general. She ended up having a surgery. The tumor got successfully removed, and she's fine now. But I know that other people are going to still have challenges in the future. So I was like, help, not only can I make money, but I can also help and heal people in the process.
Oh, wow. So, for a lot of people, I know their entry into cannabis or hemp or CBD a lot of times comes with a little bit of both. They start out with the business side of things, but yet it becomes personable, whether it's through yourself, a family member, or a loved one. And I really see that in many cases, it gives their work a little bit more viability and a little bit more credibility, because it's not just business for them, it's also a passion. And I feel that oftentimes this industry continues to lack that driving passion for a lot of people. And to hear other people that are passionate about the work that they're doing, and it's just so much more than a business, it does give a lot of light to what many people think is a dark industry. And so I'm very appreciative. So let's get into it. I know, you and I, we've talked and we've had a lot of great conversations. But one of the things I wanted to dive into today for this episode is, in your experience, what are some of the major changes that you've seen come about in farming, and how does that affect hemp? I know there's a lot of technological advances, a lot of federal updates, but within the last 10 years, you've seen the explosion of the CBD and the hemp industry. But what are some of the major changes that you've seen come forth in the last 10 years?
Well, whether it's man-made or if it's organically, climate change is real. It is getting hotter every summer. So having the viable genetics that's going to work in this heat. Last year, Kentucky, Colorado experienced some of the most worst heat they have seen in decades. Some places even had record heat. So one of the worst things we have been experiencing the past 10 years is how to manage these crops in this type of heat. Now, also when it comes to technology, previously we would do something like sprinklers or have to do a lot of handheld type
Hmm.
of manual work. But because of drip irrigation and then automatic systems, it makes it a lot easier to farm because now we can water and we can even feed by just pressing a button if you are set up to do so.
So really automating some of the processes and automating some of the things that you need to do to make them a little bit more hands off. Um, and
Right.
I feel a
Save
lot of
that.
a lot of farmers need to do that. You and I have discussed this. A lot of farmers need to embrace some of the technological advances in the last 10 years. You and I both know there are farmers right now carrying buckets of water across an
Right.
acre or 2 acre field to water just a few plants. And,
Okay.
because they're not, a lot of these technological updates, we see them via social media, YouTube, the internet. But unfortunately, a lot of farmers just don't use the internet. They're not on the internet. Many of them don't have smartphones. Some have a flip phone if they have any cell phone at all. So you're right. Those technological advances, it's going to be paramount in helping get them to the next level. So you stated that the heat, it's getting hotter every year. People we'll argue the fact about global warming. Is it real? Is it not real? Does it affect, crops and harvest? But could you tell us really quickly, what does the increase in annual temperature during cultivation season or your growing season, how does that affect the plants and the hemp plants from your experience?
So when it comes to the hemp plant, when you're propagating or starting your seed, you want to start at about 70 to 80 degrees. But if it's 110 degrees outside or even 100 degrees outside, your plants are not going to make it. They're actually going to die. Now, most people start plants on the inside and then take them out to the outside. If you start them outside, they're definitely probably not going to make it in this heat. Even if you have ones that you start on the inside and you take outside, when you're transplanting plants, the most important thing is your roots. If your roots are too hot, your plants are going to die and they're not going to take. So with this increase of heat, I'm finding it more and more that some of these plants are stunted or delayed because the roots are not able to actually attach to the sand and actually take off the way they're supposed to because it's simply too hot to do so.
Oh, and I'm glad you mentioned the roots, because from what I've seen and a lot of the dialogue that I've had, many people who are new to cultivation, whether it's hemp or potatoes or even corn, they think about what we can see with the plant. So, yes, you have a hemp plant, and this is your plant. You've got your stalk, you've got leaves everywhere, but most people don't think what's under the surface. And as you stated, those roots, that's where the plant absorbs their nutrients. That is where the food, the water intake, everything is coming through those roots, and also whatever else is in that soil. So if I've seen some people who were planting in the summertime, and as fast as they could get those clones in the ground, they were drying up, and they had a team coming behind them watering them. But it's just like if it's a hot summer day in Nevada and you pour a bottle of water out on the sidewalk, oftentimes that water is evaporating as fast as it's hitting the ground. So think about that with your plants, ladies and gentlemen. Your plants have water in them. And if you're taking a plant that went from an ambient temperature of 60 to 78 degrees and you're taking it outside into an atmospheric temperature above 100, that does cause stress on the plants. And it could adversely affect, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it straight here from the source. And that's why I put in the comments on the post, meet the grower, ask the grower questions. And that leads into my next question. So we're talking about hemp, and you're a fourth generation farmer. You've been farming for multiple generations. What made Randy Rimbert decide to keep the family tradition going? But what made you really want to pay a key focus to the hemp industry, especially cultivating industrial hemp?
It's a passion. Like I see a lot of people getting into farming. It's
Mm-hmm.
becoming a trend, but a way of life is not a trend. This is just what I do. So whether the world is good, whether the world is bad, I'm probably going to be in the dirt somewhere, digging and planting. It's a passion that I have. It's like LeBron when he's playing basketball. He's playing basketball. He does get paid, but he loves the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady just retired. He came back. He's 40 something years old. That man should have been retired, but he loves what he does so much to the point where this is what he does. This is what he breathes. I breathe farming. I love bringing life. I love figuring out problems. I love making things grow, and I love being innovative on what I do. Part of being a farmer is there's no textbook for what we do. That's the reality that most people don't know when they first start, when they say they want a book or they want a video.
Mm-hmm.
There's no book or video. Every situation is different. Your farm is going to be different from a person 10 miles away. You think that it's exactly the same, but everybody's going to create their farm specifically for their situation. And that's what I love about it. It's geared towards and it's created to what we're doing out here.
Thank you. And that's something that, many people, even myself at times when visiting farms, that I kind of lost sight of. We can have a farm growing sunflowers right here, and we can go 1 mile down the road, another farm that's growing sunflowers, and those sunflowers will come out totally different. The
Right.
topography of the soil, the landscape, the runoff, the elevation. Is it at a low point? Is it at a high point? These are all things that really come into play. And we see that in farming when, male plants potentially populate a bunch of female plants. So it's really important, like controlling that ambient environment and understanding that this is trial and error. There is no one way to grow to do everything. So with that being said, what are some of the pitfalls that you and your farm had to overcome as you navigated the initial learning curve of growing hemp?
So with any house, a house needs a foundation. And infrastructure on a farm is your foundation. I respect everybody's opinion, but you can't do this without a tractor. You can't do this without your own well of water. You can't do this without a building or two. You have to have that infrastructure in place. And if you don't have that infrastructure in place, you may not make it to that second, third, or fourth season. So building the proper infrastructure to where you make this thing turnkey, you're always turning out different things. The only thing you should be doing is improving your system, improving your genetics, and improving your techniques. You shouldn't have to be buying or trying to find how we're going to get these things into the ground every single year. So making sure that you have the infrastructure in place. Now, the other problem is money. Farms are not a cheap thing. It's a rich man's club, but you can be smart about it when it comes to your finances, to the things that you invest, to the making things that's going to make money. Because the reality of it is 1 point something percent of the U.S. population are farmers. Of that, 1.3% are black. There's 50,000 black people that farm today. That's a reduction from the 910,000 black farmers we had in 1920. We don't have the same farmers. We don't have the same amount of opportunities for finances. So we have to be very creative with our finances. The USDA has done better because they admitted that they had almost 100 years where they discriminated against black people. So whereas a white farmer could go in and get $1.2 million to build a farm, we could barely get $50,000. And with $50,000, if the white farmer is getting 1.2 million, what are we going to do with 50,000? Realistically, what are we going to do with $500,000 if it takes $1 million to run the operation correctly? So finances and making sure the infrastructure is absolutely right is the pitfalls that any farmer would have to deal with.
Wow, you make a really good point. There was an article I read just before the pandemic, and I can't remember the publication, but it was out of Florida. And it was based on exactly what you said. They took a large group of farmers who were looking to file a federal lawsuit because I don't want to name the financial institution. They tracked how long it took farmers' applications for funding and loans to get processed. And in this discovery, they stated that it was taking the average white farmer or non-minority farmer their application about 30 days to receive a full review, and that black farmers were getting no replies within 6 months. So 30 days for a complete review versus 6 months for a partial review. You can't hide those discrepancies. So like you said, a lot of generational farmers have stopped. The previous generations, they took pride in it. That was their passion. They wanted to keep the family tradition going. Well, I see over the last 3 or 4 decades, with changes in culture, many people, they don't want to be in the dirt. I don't want to be in the hot sun. I don't want to be getting a farmer's tan. I don't want ticks and fleas and bugs and sweat. People want to dress nice. They want to sit in a climate controlled environment. So if we want to have sustainable farming, we have to make farming sustainable. And that includes the youth development programs, entrepreneurship programs, and also working with land grant schools, agricultural schools, to really push the narrative to make more of the youth want to pursue avenues in farming. So thank you for that great point. And I really hope that rings a bell with some people. That leads me into my next question. Organics. I noticed you were really big on things being organic, natural farming. So organic farming has become more and more sought after by those looking who are procuring produce and agriculture. What can you tell us about organic farming, and how does organic farming differ from traditional farming? What's the main difference in the two?
Okay, so you have actually three. You have traditional, you have organic, and you have natural. So organic is Well, actually, let's start with the traditional. Traditional amount of weight is nitrogen. Nitrogen pretty much grows 99% of what we grow. So synthetically, they were using nitrogen. That nitrogen was running off and creating red tide. It was killing fish. It was killing manatees. It was killing different things. So they decided to switch to organic. Organic does not always mean good or clean or positive. Organic means it's just they reduce the amount of chemicals to what they believe is a safe level to that it's not going to harm the environment as much. Then you have natural. Natural is what we strive to do. So we are 99% natural. We do have some things that are organic, but what is natural is literally what comes from the earth. So we use ashes, which is a great soil conditioner. We use seaweed extract, 100% natural. It's great with the MKP. And then we also use fish manure. So fish manure is high with different microbials and nutrients as well, but they're all 100% natural. There's nothing wrong with organic because there's a time and a place for organic, in particular when you're talking about shelf life, but we definitely don't prefer to do chemicals because we can't be in an industry trying to make people healthy, but then also making them sick at the same time with the chemicals that we put in there. Some of these chemicals have proven to cause things like depression, but we're trying to cure depression. They have proven to cause cancer. We're trying to cure and help cancer. So we can't cancel out the cannabis or the benefits of the cannabis by using the very chemicals that are causing a big problem and a reason for us growing the cannabis to begin with.
Absolutely. That's a multifaceted answer, and I really appreciate that. So, for those who may not know, ladies and gentlemen, there's three types of farming. You have traditional, you have natural, and you have organic. And it's up to you to decide how you want to grow. I know that we're looking for sustainability practices and we're looking to reduce our environmental impact. That is in every industry, especially with the hemp industry, because as he stated, your plants need food, ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of people think that plants just need water and sunlight. Plants are animals. They're living beings. They're alive, so they need nutrients, and that's why he stated with the fish manure. There are many different ways to fertilize, to feed your plants, and you don't always have to go with the chemicals you see in the stores. I know a lot of farmers, they make their own teas or compost teas. They make their own plant food, and they grow this organically. Like he said, with the microbials, it's all on putting it into your work and developing your best practices. There's not going to be a one-time, a one-shot thing. It's going to take time. You're going to have to dial in your processes. And as Randy stated, if the temperature is going up every year, you may have to tweak and peak your recipes and what the time that you're putting your clones out. Because if we realize that it's going up a half a degree a month early, or a 1 degree a month early for many people, you may think, oh, 1 degree in temperature variation is not a big deal. That is a huge deal because 1 degree can be the difference between ice melting and ice staying a solid state. So thank you so much for that, Randy. I really hope that those who are attending have paid attention. And so I see we have a comment here. It says, "I've advocated and cried out like an eagle to both black and white folks for equity in this space, but I realize it's going to take some time for the weeds to grow before tilling the soil. The only solution is bottom-up strategic approach, control, and ownership." I do understand that, and we do need more people in this conversation, in the narrative, and not just talking about end-use products. A lot of people, when we talk about hemp, they just want to talk about CBD. But as you're stating, there's a lot that goes into that. And so now that you've discussed, the difference between the types of farming, this is what you and I were discussing last week. I really want to pay some emphasis on what role does sourcing the right genetics play in cultivation, and what role did you sourcing your right genetics play for cultivating in Florida?
So I have a equation I have. It's called 60-30-5-5. 60% of growing hemp or cannabis is your genetics The other 30% is your environment. The last 5% is farming yourself, and then the other 5% is what you feed them. It's the opposite when you start to talk to other different companies. They're saying that it's all about the farming, this. It's a lie. You can have the best of genetics in the best situation with the worst farmer in the history of mankind, and you're going to have an awesome yield. You can have the best farmer, cannabis farmer in the history of mankind, the worst genetics, the worst environment, and they're going to fail. What is not always shown is that we take losses. Actually, in fact, in the state of Florida, losing 30% of your hemp crop is considered acceptable. So what is not always shown is that we're going to take our losses. So by having the right genetics, which we struggled for a couple of years, it's going to help you be a lot more successful. Our first year, we used what the state required us to use. And doing so, we actually had a fairly decent harvest. The second year, I went off of what somebody swore was going to work. Somebody out of Colorado, they said they used them in Florida. They didn't. They later told me the truth. But the return was horrible. My 5% as a farmer could only do so much. It's just the genetics did not do well. But now we have almost an acre outside right now that's equaling, if not going to surpass, our first year crop, because we have some really good genetics that came out of Washington that have been tried and used. Also, another misconception that does not get put on TV, is not always talked about, 99% of what we use in a hybrid. And anytime you use a hybrid, it's only going to work for its condition. It's going to be a little bit stubborn. So the purpose of a hybrid is you take the mother genetic and then you add on a father genetic or vice versa. The reason for doing this is because you want a plant to be bigger. You want a plant to smell a certain way. You want a plant to be purple. You want a plant to be pink. So by changing the mother and the father, you get these hybrids, and that's what majority of what we're doing is growing hybrids. So what we have been working on at our farm is doing more of the mothers and more of the fathers that are naturally adapt to our conditions. We're not Colorado. Colorado is colder. Colorado has more daylight during the summertime. Florida, we only going to get 14 hours of light maximum on our longest day. After that, we're talking about 13 hours, and it gets lower and lower to the point where we're eventually going to be close to 11 hours of daylight. Cannabis needs a minimum of 14 hours of daylight. So if you put plants outside, they might already start to flower versus being in another state. So their genetics is not necessarily always going to work in Florida. What Florida is closer to where the original strands came from. There are three places: China, India, and Africa. This is over 5,000 years ago. China has been using cannabis for over 5,000 years. India has been using cannabis for 5,500 years, and Africa has been using it for over 10,000 years. They have hieroglyphics showing that they were using hemp plants and cannabis to treat brain tumors over 10,000 years ago. So those exact same strands were brought over here, hybrid, and adjusted to live in a place like a Colorado or a New York or Oregon instead of its natural way.
Wow. Whew. That's a lot. And I know I visited a farm last summer, and they were talking about climate zones and the particular genetics that they were pushing. They grew well in a particular climate zone. Just because they did well in the Pacific Northwest, just because they did well in the Central Valley, that does not mean they're going to do well in Georgia. You know, Georgia, a lot of states have rich soil. Look at Kentucky, Oregon, the black, rich soil that's full of nutrients. Well, a lot of Georgia, we've got clay. Anybody been to the South? You know, Georgia's known for red dirt. That's why a lot of the bottom of the houses, and it's not even a dirt, it's a clay. So understanding what genetics are going to breed well, what genetics are going to do well. And as you stated, also controlling the relationship. You've got the mother, you've got the father. You can tweak and peak those through breeding and genetic sourcing, you know, ladies and gentlemen. So that's where your pheno hunts come in. That is where
Right.
you find out, you look for what you're looking for. So no, you're not going to get some seeds, or you're not going to get some clones and crossbreed all of these things in 6 months. And I know a lot of farmers, they do a lot of their breeding in the wintertime in greenhouses. So that way they can keep going year round. And when the spring comes, it's time to set out next year's crop. They're ready to go with the genetics that they know works best for them. So I really thank you for all these gems. I saw in one of the comments that the political landscape is not beneficial to the farmers in Florida, especially minority farmers. And that is why I'm constantly pushing for people to know your local legislators, know who your local elected officials are, know who's in charge of your agricultural commissioner, learn who your lieutenant governor, because oftentimes these people sit on committees and planning projects that directly affect farmers. So being a
Right.
part of the conversation will definitely help you become part of the solution. Now, we we've seen a lot of CBD. CBDs in stores, gas stations. I even saw a recent infomercial late at night for CBD, right? And the people that were on that infomercial are not healthcare providers and are definitely not farmers. So, with the CBD market in many places being considered flooded, there are tons of biomass just sitting around the country at this very moment. What do you foresee as the future of hemp and hemp cultivation?
Well, there's over 60,000 uses of hemp and cannabis. Well, hemp. So let me say that. So we pretty much, you only got 10 different ways you can go with weed. Hemp, you can go 60,000 ways. So yes, the first couple of years, everybody was doing flour. Then the next year, everybody's doing oil. Last year, it was isolate, and now Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10. I think the future is going to be beverages. I think it's going to be edibles, and that there's always going to be a flower market, but it's going to be for the best flower. So in order to get premium prices, you're going to have a premium setup, premium plants in order to get whatever you want dollar wise. So I can see the big boys, Coca-Cola and whatnot, having a hemp drink. I can see that self melatonin. Melatonin has already started to add hemp on to some of their products. So I can see more medication, in particular when the FDA finally backs it. Once the FDA backs it, man, this stuff's going to be in dog food. It's going to be in candy bars. It's going to be in your gas. You can make biodiesel out of hemp. Your clothes, you can, in the future, you might go to a store wearing a hemp Nike shirt with some Adidas hemp shoes, wearing a necklace made out of hemp, going to get some diesel made out of hemp, eating a candy bar, drinking some water, all out of hemp. That's just how viable it is as a crop and how versatile it is as a crop.
You're absolutely right. I do a lot of work in hemp. I sit on a couple of hemp committees, and the future of hemp is right now, ladies and gentlemen. And it's so much more than CBD. As Randy just stated, hemp food. And I know people are like, what food? Are we going to eat the buds? No, no, no. Hemp grain, ladies and gentlemen. Our
Right.
put it this way, our chairman of Mr. Eric Range, owns a company known as Hemp and Fork. So if you're watching, or you're listening to this, look up Hemp and Fork, and they sell hemp hearts. We know that hemp hearts, the seeds, are really healthy for you. They're really good for cholesterol. They're full of antioxidants and natural vitamins. I love them. We were at a conference. Eric had plenty of little small samples, and I got to tell you, every morning of the conference, I ate me a pouch of those hemp hearts with some avocados. We're going to see sustainable food sources. There is such thing as hemp milk, and I know people are like, how do you get milk from hemp? There's so many things that could be made of, as you stated. Once the the FDA approves it, we may even see hemp grain cereal someday. You never know. We may see pediatric gummies for sale, or even issued by pediatricians. The other aspect of hemp that I'm pushing big for is hemp fiber. We know that bioplastics are destroying our ecosystem. They're
Right.
finding bioplastics and microplastics inside of human beings, inside of animals, especially in our oceans. And we have to find a sustainable solution for the plastic plague, as I like to call it. And hemp could potentially be one of those solutions. We're not going to sit here and tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that, oh, hemp's the end all be all. No, but it is a potential source of remediation for bioplastics, for fibers, for your nylons, your textiles. I want to see more hemp-based medical products. I spent a lot of my career in the medical field, and I like to see more hemp-based medical products because, as we know, it's antimicrobial. It's antifungal. So, I long term, I feel that it could potentially prevent quicker infection. So it could, you don't have to change bandages as fast, especially for people out in the field, remote areas, and not last but not least, building materials. The housing
Right.
market is at an all-time high. Wood is at an all-time high. And I don't see trees, maybe you do, but I don't see trees growing any faster now than they did 100 years ago, 500 years ago. And what we really have to understand is if we have 60 acres of trees, and these trees are 60 to 80 feet tall, those trees have probably been growing a couple hundred years, maybe 100 years or so. If we cut those trees down to make paper, to make lumber, building materials, it's going to take another couple of 100 years to replace said trees.
Correct.
Whereas if we push the narrative for more people to grow with industrial hemp, we can replace that field a couple times a year. And ladies and gentlemen, when you're growing for fiber and you're growing for CBD or oil, it's different. Back to Randy's
Right.
previous statements, the genetics are different with those plants that they're growing for flour to make oil and things of that nature. Yeah, you want short, squatty plants with a lot of flowers. You want a lot of nugs on them. You want a lot of coverage because you want to try to get the highest yield. Well, if we're growing to make clothes and tables and books and shelves, we want those stalks long, strong, and fibrous. And that is a different process. And we have to understand, and back to your other statement, was just because you grow something here doesn't mean that a mile down the road it's going to grow the same. And if we could
Right.
get more farmers in strategic areas to all come together to grow hemp, this is how we can truly push the narrative on that supply chain. I've had a lot of discussions. I had a discussion with a professor up at Georgia Tech University, and their paper institute, and he really broke down as to why don't we see more industrial hemp paper processing factories, more decortication methods. The methods haven't changed very much over the last 200 years. It's just creating the sustainable infrastructure. And it is coming. It is a work in progress, but we need more people like yourself, like myself, to really push that narrative and help control the conversation. And I know we're coming up on 45 minutes, but I do have a couple of more questions for you. From for current and future hemp farmers and cultivators, what advice would you give them regarding entering into growing industrial hemp and farming in general? So if you've got some people that are watching, they're filling out their applications and they're finding out, who their local ecosystem conservators are, what advice would you give to them as they prepare to get their hands in the dirt?
Be patient, have faith, do not rush it, start small, build your infrastructure first, and then understand that this is a long-term situation. It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be a fast return. It's probably going to be 3 years before you get your money back. But if you hold on, you can eat generationally forever.
Wow. Be patient, everyone. I think that out of that patience, nothing that grows fast grows well. Nothing that grows
Mm-hmm.
well and healthy grows fast. So
Exactly.
please understand this is. I know a lot of people they see conferences and they go to cannabis webinars and symposiums and things of that nature, and they hear these people. Oh well, I invested $30,000 last September, and now we're sitting on a six-figure valuation.
Right.
You're probably not farming.
Right.
You got axles that break, trailer hitches that break, irrigation lines that explode. And I see at the bottom lots of hemp sold in your corner stores is showing up in drug tests. Any thoughts? To that LinkedIn user who dropped that question, I really feel that comes down really strongly to where did you source that hemp? That gas station, that vendor. Many of these people, they're not looking at COAs. They're not
Right.
comparing analysis. They're not doing an additional third or even fourth party testing, they're looking at numbers, they're looking at spreadsheets. How much can we buy for this price? Package it up and sell it for this price. I don't care what happens in the middle. We are just looking to turn a profit. Where does our profit margin lie in the process? And I'm sure you and I have both have seen companies that could very well offer a cleaner product, a healthier product, a more sustainable product, but that may cost them more during the cultivation, as you stated, between the traditional, the natural, and the organic farming. If I realize, yes, I could make my product a little bit healthier, but on the front end, it's going to cost me an additional $7,500 per 3 acres. Whereas I cannot do that and use that $7,500 to cultivate another 3 acres. So it's really going to be contingent upon where you get it, where they got theirs, and who's behind the brand. I am really big on QR codes, certificates of analysis, and look up the testing. If you look up a product and it sends you to a lab test, look up that lab, but also take the name of that lab, copy it, paste it into another search bar. Make sure it's a real lab, because there are such things as Photoshop out there. There is such thing as graphic design, to where people can create their own fake documents, fake lab tests. And also, what I had to tell someone out in Oregon is, the company that's offering the product, make sure that third-party lab is an independent lab, because a lot of times you'll look, the company that owns the grow site, also down the line, you follow the paperwork, they own the lab as well. So of course, none of their stuff is going to fail. So when it comes to passing drug screens, I would be very cautious. And from the healthcare side, one thing that I'm always pushing for people to understand: just because a product states that it is 0% THC or 0.3% THC, that is contingent upon that particular batch, that particular lab, that particular test. That does not mean that when it is synthesized in your stomach, it is digested, that additional chemical processes cannot happen. I've been a part of a few medical cannabis studies, and there are people who consume different cannabinoids, and once it is oxidized and processed in their stomach and their liver, it converts non-THC cannabinoids into THC derived cannabinoids. There's a chemical process that goes on in some people's stomach, in their bloodstreams, in their liver, that actually raises the level of THC. So please be careful. I think some of the key advice that I give to people: if your job if you keeping your job is contingent upon you successfully passing a drug test, I would be very leery in regards to using cannabis derived products. I know that the label may say 0% THC, but again, that goes back to our metabolism. The human body can do some amazing things. And also, that company could also have potentially lied or misled what was actually in on that label. So just because it says 0%, that does not mean you can't test positive, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. So please be careful, be cognizant, and look at what you're doing. Find out what your job is. If you work for the government, I tell people they're a public service, fire, EMS, police. I would be cautious. I would reach out to my employer and look in your employee handbook, find out what the rules are for those products, because there are a lot of companies that are making amendments and adjustments to their current standings on CBD, hemp derived products, and THC. So really know your job, know your role, but also know where you're sourcing from. I've caught flack for this in the past. I don't propose people buy things at the gas station. The gas station is for buying gas, maybe some water or something, a snack or something you may need quickly. It's a convenience store. It's there for convenience. The products that are in those gas stations, those gas station attendees, they may go to a hemp conference but they usually go into a trade show. I'm not going to name any particular trade shows. They go, they buy off price, off packaging, and the person they talk to. They're just looking at what's going to sell, what's going to look good on my display. So take your time. And if you're doing it for health, or you're doing it something to increase your wellness, stop by one of your local CBD stores. Stop by one of your local smoke shops. Stop by someone who you know that owns a store that sells these products, and get education, because education is paramount. I cannot stress that enough. Randy can grow all the best hemp in the world, but if you don't know the education behind it, you may not want to purchase the products that his hemp goes to create those end-use products. So I really want to touch on to that. I didn't mean to go too long on that, but that question really sparked that because we get more and more people every day asking, "Hey, if I consume hemp, am I going to fail a drug test? Hey, if I give my mother these gummies, are they going to interact with her medication? Or I'm a military veteran. I have a lot of veterans that ask, hey man, is this going to affect my military benefits? So knowing where you get your stuff, sourcing it from a clean source, and also doing your research. Well, we're coming up on an hour, Randy. Tell our attendees today, how can they find you? How can they contact you? And how could they potentially source hemp from Rembert Family Farms?
So you can find me on Facebook at Rembert Family Farms. You can find me on Instagram at Rembert Family Farms. And then our email address is rembertfamilyfarms@gmail.com. Our website is rembertfamilyfarms.com. We have a host of products from oil to tincture. We're working on getting gummies. We have flour. We have pre-roll. We have tea. We have spray topical. We have hand sanitizer. So you can find a host of things on that website. You can order directly from the website, or you can shoot me a message, and you can order directly from me once you look at the website.
So, everyone in attendance and people who are going to watch this down the road, www.rembertfamilyfarm.com. As he stated, they have a variety of products from tinctures, topicals, pain relief gels, and stay tuned because it sounds like they maybe have some gummies coming in the works as well. And Randy, I know that we talked about something that's upcoming, and that leads into some of the closing parts of this webinar, the symposium. So, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, we will be hosting our first Sow the Land Hemp Symposium June 17th and 18th here in Georgia at Fort Valley State University. We have the honor of having Mr. Randy Rembert come in as one of our speakers. This this symposium will have two tracks. It'll be the freedom to grow and the freedom to flow. Each track will be different. Some are more geared towards farmers and some other towards the ancillary business of the industry. We'll have things from hemp farm planning, partnering, technology, equipment, and also including cooperative economics. The second track is going to be the freedom to flow. So, as we stated, these are going to be the ancillary parts, the products, the retail, the packaging, the formulation, marketing, and branding. We're offering a 50% off coupon code. It is now looking at the bottom of the screen. And stay tuned because I'm going to be doing some weekly updates on who's going to be the upcoming speakers, who are the vendors, and how can you come out. So we're really looking forward to having you up here in Georgia, my brother. It's going to be nothing short of a pleasure. And be sure, ladies and gentlemen, to follow Minorities for Medical Marijuana. And if you are a farmer, please join our Farmers Network. It costs you nothing to join, but it also puts you in the Rolodex of farmers. And we have resources, grant opportunities that come to us that we send out. And also collaborations. We have opportunities for farmers to connect with other farmers, processors, manufacturers, because it's really about helping us develop that network to create the best practices to help farmers and business owners become more successful. We'll be serving breakfast and lunch both days. And again, it will be at Fort Valley State University. If you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me or Minorities for Medical Marijuana. My email address is Stanley, Stanley, at m4mmunited.org. And again, this is in regards to our Sow the Land Hemp Farming Symposium. But at Minorities for Medical Marijuana, we don't just stop there. There are a lot of people that say, oh, you guys are just, is it just marijuana? Is it just hemp? No. We have a variety of programs. As many of you saw earlier today, our director of our Health is Wellness, Nicole Buffon. So we have Health is Wellness. We have a program known as M Procure, and that is our procurement program. If you're a product, if you're a vendor, if you're a service, please go to our website, M4MM United, and look at the different programs. If you say, hey, I want to get my products into your procurement program, we would love to have you. Again, these are free resources. And once you insert yourself into the procurement program, it puts you on the availability list to have your products vendorized for people, MSOs, dispensaries, retail locations that say, hey, we're looking for more minority brands to put in our stores. Cool. Come to our in procurement program. We have a program known as Project Clean Slate. It is a national program where we actually do expungement clinics and workshops across the country. They've been going on for a couple of years now, and I can say that they truly make a significant impact because we've found out that oftentimes the barriers of entry for people into the cannabis industry and sometimes even the hemp industry is that previous charge that was on their record. So if we can help to get those charges, get records expunged, records sealed, that is our goal, to really try to improve the quality of life. So you've got the Sow the Land, you've got our Health is Wellness, you've got our hemp farming, and we have recently launched our Veterans Initiative. So yes, we also have a Veterans Initiative headed up by Mr. Joe Fernandez. Joe is an 18-year military veteran, and he's going to be really putting together programming for our farmers. So follow Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Be sure to like, click, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Again, my name is Stanley. Yes, Eric McGuina, please shoot me an email and I will be glad to connect with you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been this month's edition of Sow the Land, brought to you by Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Stay tuned, take care of each other, and be sure to set on your notifications for live updates and alerts. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon.